can you be too self-reliant? Can you be so self-reliant that you stop allowing others in and you're cutting off that reciprocity? Could it overemphasize the self thing to the point that it's suggestive that we don't need others?
This is the Born to be Brilliant podcast, helping you harness the habits and unlock the tools to bring you more meaning, vibrance, and the personal power to help you shine like the diamond you are.
So this episode, it was inspired entirely by a thought. And that thought was quite simply, where do we draw the line on what classifies as needing external validation versus taking ownership for our own feelings, emotions, results, outcomes, etc. Let me explain that. So I stand wholeheartedly in a belief that we are responsible for our outcomes, right? We are responsible for our reality, or at least our reaction to our reality. There are certain things we can't control, of course, but in terms of our outcomes and our results and so on, they're usually a result or a reflection of our choices and our actions, our beliefs and our values and all of those things. And so I'm a firm believer in ownership, self-responsibility for where you are, the choices you make, the mistakes you might make, your wins, your losses, all of the things. And that and from that stance of there's not an external person or circumstance that you can rest your results on. So sure, things happen out of our control, but it is up to us what we do with them. And I think most entrepreneurial people, or most of our listeners, would probably agree with that sentiment. However, I found myself wondering something recently, and it was just around that sense of, as human beings, we naturally love it, right? When somebody pays us a compliment, if somebody gives us some praise or gives us some recognition in some way. And that might just be for the effort you've put into an outfit that you've chosen that day, or it might be for a result you got in an exam or whatever it might be. But when somebody gives you a congratulations, a compliment, you're just glowing today, a nice words, kindness, it feels good to receive that, no doubt. But it also feels good to give that. I don't know about you, but I feel good when I share something nice with somebody, and I love doing that. And as human beings, we do that, right? That's part of connection, and connection is what we are wired for, that we need. We are not solo people. We simply will die if we don't have people and connection. So with that in mind, I started to really go down a thought process and an exploration into the notion of how this self-reliance and independence and ownership could be taken too far. And I think this can be particularly true in entrepreneurial and self-development spaces where we are more in touch with that stuff, I think, and could be taken so far that we then almost forget how to give and take, and the reciprocity of the things that affirm us, right? Just the things that feel good. So no, I don't need somebody to tell me I did well done, or you look nice today. I don't need that at all. I'm in control of how I feel about the things I do, and I don't need somebody to say that to me. However, when somebody does, it does feel good and it does feel nice. And it also can be a good reflection. People can reflect. It's like feedback, isn't it? So this got me thinking. And then I started thinking about this in relationships as well. So when it comes to when you're like me and you're in an entrepreneurial relationship where both partners are entrepreneurs or business people and are so have complete self-ownership and absolutely do not rely on somebody else to make them happy. Like, that's something I think is really important. Your happiness exists within you. It is not in the hands of somebody else. So when you are, I know Will Smith used to talk about this a lot, didn't he? I know he's outwardly said that. He's like, my wife knows that, and I know it is not my job to make her happy. He explains it really well. But I think when you are in a relationship where you both have that belief and operate in that way, which I think is really good, can it lead to almost a lack of reciprocity of those bits of feedback and of those things that, again, you don't need but you would like? And it's a big question mark. I'm continuing to explore this, and I was like, no, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do this episode because I want to put this message out there that actually self-worth and self-care and a self-ownership and all these things and independence are amazing. But can we take it so far? No, I don't need that validation. I don't need external validation to feel good. But can we take it so far that we almost start to cut that out? And then what do we lose? We lose connection. We lose the oxytocin, those hormones that feel good when we feel connection. I think it's a danger, and I think it's an increasing danger in our digital world today. I think that this hyper independence could be a problem, and I think that the digital world can make us even more connected and yet less connected, if that makes sense. We are more connected than ever because we are talking to people constantly on various platforms 24/7 with these things that we're holding in our hands at the moment. And it would be a point not too far away where we're not even holding it in our hands anymore. It's somewhere on our body. It's like we are 24/7 pretty much now connected when we didn't used to be. But yet I think we are more disconnected than ever. I think it's superficial connection. I think that the real depth of connection that comes from being in that immediate proximity of another human being, that comes from touch, physical touch, kind words, acts of kindness, looks, literally looks, engagement, eye contact, body language. I think those things are vital. And I think that this hyper-connected digital world is making us lose that. It's almost making it like easier not to. Yeah, it's easier not to. Oh, we don't need to go to that thing. We can just jump on a call or send a voice note or whatever. And don't get me wrong, I think the convenience and the leverage that we can have with those things is great up until a point. But what if it does this kind of damage to that level of connection? And then what happens? Where do we end up feeling? Like, where are we? We can end up feeling quite alone, quite isolated, cut off. And, how much of we are a human. We are not able to stand in our power and feel great all the time. And that's where people pick us up. And it could just be a smile, a kind word that picks you up. That's what I mean. It's like, you don't need it, but it helps. Actually, sometimes I think we do need it. Sometimes I think we do actually have tough times. And it is down to others. How many people have said, I couldn't have got through that if it weren't for, these people were there. This person is my rock. That's connection. That's love in all the different types, And the neuroscience of this is there. This isn't, I'm not making this up. We know that. We know that the human brain is wired. We're tribal. We know that, you only have to go back in time and see how we operated. We know women, especially, women are hugely communal. We are used to doing things in packs. We work together, even more so than the male brain is how we work. We thrive. Sometimes an affirmation from another human being is so powerful. And that's why various therapies work and so on as well. But the brain will release dopamine, which we know is associated with pleasure, and that feels good. Oxytocin, I mentioned as well, that's like a bonding hormone. It's, again, more connection. And I genuinely believe that these neurochemicals will strengthen our sense of belonging, our sense of support, and increase our resilience, not decrease it. I believe that it's those boosters that actually increase us, not create a reliance on something external to get through things. So I really do think there's balance to be had here in terms of the no, we shouldn't place all of our happiness, our well-being, our results, our outcomes, and everything else in other people's hands, and that if they can't, tell us that we've got this and help us to feel good and pick us up when we're feeling down, it's all, I can't help it. Like, absolutely, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that we can go too far on the independence part, and the self-care narrative is massive, right? The self-care narrative is huge, and it is important because for too long we haven't taken enough care of ourselves. Again, particularly women and mothers are known in history, and not exclusively, but just quite typically, at putting everyone else before themselves and putting themselves at the bottom of the pile. And we're still doing that a lot to this day. And the narrative of self-care is important. Like, you've got to take care of yourself in order to be able to take care of others. Like, I remember my child saying that to me when she was about 7. And it's like, I'm so glad you've got this at such a young age. I'm going, no, Mum, you need to look after you. And I'm like, thank you. But it's hugely important. But could it overemphasize the self thing to the point that it's suggestive that we don't need others? Even self-care includes others, though, doesn't it? You only have to go, I'm going to go and have a massage. Well, someone's going to give you that massage. So they are giving you that care. You're not doing it all by yourself. Sometimes self-care means actually going and having a coffee and a good old natter with a friend. And that's the best thing you could do. And it's the thing you need most in the world. So I think it's really important that whilst we take ownership, we don't isolate ourselves and cut off the connection that is really, really needed to thrive. I think that it's a shared thing. And I think that that's why we are in things like relationships. When you're in a relationship, a partnership, it's exactly that. It's a partnership. And so in that situation, I think, and I am not a relationship expert, I would love to know what a relationship expert would say about this, but I think it then does become a shared thing. It's like, actually, no, I will take care of my well-being, but actually it's partly your responsibility as well, because we're a partnership now. So I think, and all the different relationships, like friends, that's what friendship's for. It's two-way. You look after each other. You look out for each other. You help each other when you're stuck. That's what you do, right? So how do we reflect on this and assess like where we are? Can you consider, like, am I overly resilient? Am I or no, not overly resilient. Am I putting more weight on my own shoulders than I need to? Is there a way that I can share the load? Is there additional support I can bring in? And I think that is admirable, and that is growth, and that is taking ownership, because you're going, this need or this thing needs to be better. It's like in a business when you delegate. It's going, I can't do all of this myself. I need to delegate these tasks. It's the same, right? Can you be too self-reliant? Can you be so self-reliant that you stop allowing others in and you're cutting off that reciprocity? I know that I've definitely been there, where I've been almost like I've taken ownership so much for things that I'm like, actually, that is not my problem. I've done my bit, actually. And I almost go and take over ownership, because I also want to make sure everyone's okay. It's not always the best thing. It doesn't always serve people the best. You're actually starving them of the chance to look at things from, and what they need and what support systems they need, if you're always jumping in and doing it for them. So, and do we as entrepreneurs secretly have a belief that we shouldn't need anyone? Because I think that's another piece of that independent stance, especially solopreneurs, where it's like, I've got this, and you're a powerhouse. You're a powerhouse. You shouldn't need anyone else. Is that true? Is that really true? Is that serving you? And is there a correlation here with allowing ourselves to be seen, to be held, and to be affirmed? How many times have you been paid a compliment and you've batted it back? Oh, what, this old thing? It's only that. And you've played it down immediately. It's a knee-jerk reaction instead of just a thank you. Because somebody paid you a compliment, and the polite thing to do is thank them and accept it, because then you're receiving. But the minute we bat it back, we are reflecting it back, and not because we're being rude to the complimenter, but because we are closed to receiving. We've closed it down. It's uncomfortable. We are not used to being held and seen and affirmed by others. So we are almost ultra independent. Too much so, perhaps. If any of this resonates, I'd really love to hear from you. I'd love to hear how this is playing out for you, because I think this is huge in life and business, especially for entrepreneurs, because usually an entrepreneurial person will have inadvertently gone through all sorts of personal growth, all kinds of development, learned probably a lot about self-ownership, resilience, independence, and all those things, and had to overcome challenges of, not worrying about what other people think and not letting other people's opinions dictate your moves, and standing in your power regardless. Like, all these things, that's all really good, but how far do we go sometimes with that, and does it cut these other things off? So with that in mind, I think that there's a massive call to reclaim connection as part of our personal power. I really do. I think that personal power requires connection. It requires others. And I think it's time. I think it's time that we start shouting about this a bit more, and being proud to be part of something, to be connected, to not think we've got to have it all together and do it all by ourselves. And I think that I don't think that anybody particularly said you did, but I think that it's an interpretation that we have adopted from so many other narratives over a period of time. So with that, we don't lose the responsibility. We don't lose that self-responsibility. We don't give that away. What we do is we keep that, but we also bring it in with relational nourishment, the connection and the of all those relationships. Now, they could be professional, they could be personal, they can be friendships, they can be family, they can be romantic, they can be any of those relationships. But I think that it's so vital that we do that. Something that I've said this to my husband before, and I'm going to say it right now, because I think this will be a thing that people go, oh yeah, I get what you're saying. I am completely capable of changing a light bulb, or, I don't know, fixing something right in the house. I can do it. And if I lived alone, which, I did in my 20s, or if I had to, I could do it. But sometimes you just want someone to come and do it for you, or you just want that person, not anyone, not some maintenance person. You want that person who loves you, who's got your back, who sees you and goes, hey, I got that. Hey, it's fine. I've got that. Let me do that. And it's stupid little things like that make us feel seen, make us feel loved, make us, and ultimately that's connection. And then we feel that connection. And little things like that every day, I think, are the secret to thriving relationships and also self-thriving, because you feel affirmed, you feel like validated, right? And yeah, you could do it. You could do it all yourself. You could literally walk through this whole life fully independently. Sure. Would it be fun? Would it be a bit sad, wouldn't it? It would be a bit lonely. And ultimately, science tells us that we do die if we're alone. So it's not what we crave. It's not what we want. And I wonder how prevalent this is with female entrepreneurs, because, if you're like me, you're fiercely independent. You can do all the things yourself, and you at some point have won the narrative of, I don't need anybody else. I would be fine on my own. And yeah, sure, well done. Yeah, congratulations, you would. It doesn't mean that's what you want, and it doesn't mean that's what you need, and that doesn't mean that that's nourishing your inner being and your heart and soul. It really, it will wear thin. And I don't think you can survive like that. Sometimes for a period of time, and sometimes you have to. And maybe that is because you are in survival mode. But it's not a long-term game, is it, really? And so I don't like I don't want to be princessed. I don't want everything done for me, and I don't want to be rendered, incapable. I don't think codependency is healthy. Like, I wouldn't want to be in a codependent relationship. I think that it's about a great relationship is two independent individuals that have completely got each other's backs, that know how to lift each other up when they're down, and it will go like that. And you'll have times when, one person's chips are down and the other one is like, I got you right now. Don't worry, I've got this. And vice versa. And that is what is the ultimate, being seen, being held, and it lifts you from within. And I think it's so freaking powerful. So I hope that's resonated and made sense. But I like just thinking out loud like this. I like sharing my thoughts in this way where you can really get into my mind, and I can put it out there in a way that I do think, I think other people will think that way. But this whole thought process led me down the path of, I preach and stand for ownership. I believe that the opposite of ownership is victim mentality quite often. Like when you take ownership of things, you're in the driving seat and you don't blame, right? The opposite of ownership is blame and victim, and it's not my fault, and it's because of that person or that thing or that occurrence or that circumstance. Whereas ownership says, in spite of those things, I am okay because, or I can navigate this. That's ownership, not reliance on external things or people. Yes, but does that go too far? And that's when I started exploring this, and I thought about this from a business and personal standpoint, and there's so many bits we could delve into. But for now, I wanted to put that out there, and I would very much love to hear from you, your take on this, your thoughts and your experience with this, especially if you identify as a powerhouse entrepreneur, male or female, but I imagine lots of women will potentially feel like me in that way. And where are you getting your healthy external validation? Because I think there is such a thing. And I don't think that all external validation is unhealthy or unnecessary. I think that it's healthy, and as long as you don't rely on it. So I'd love to hear your take on that. And I will catch you in the next episode. See you soon.
I hope you enjoyed this episode, and remember, go out there and shine your light bright because you were born to be brilliant.